Welcome to What the Body.
Welcome to What the Body.
Whoop, whoop. We have Dr. Jenni on today with us. She is the resident sex expert for Adam and Eve. She is also a co-founder with her husband for the Intimacy Agency based in Colorado, correct?
The Intimacy Institute, yes.
Institute. I'm so sorry. The Intimacy Institute based in Colorado with your partner. That's so exciting. Yeah.
Exciting.
So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
We are so excited to have you. We want to hear all about your story, but for a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, I think there's a lot of like stigma around sex, and it's things that we like don't talk to our friends about. So having people like you on our podcast just really opens the door for people to like hear things that they don't really talk about with their friends. I think that's super important.
It's going to be super fun.
Yeah.
I love it. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Give permission people to talk, to be vulnerable, to let it all be normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Normalizing sex conversation. I'm here for that.
You are you? I feel like you're nervous.
I'm here for that. I'm ready.
Good. Good. So let's start off by telling us your story. Kind of where you started, how you got to this point.
My story is, let's see, I guess my story starts in childhood around kind of being the Dr. Ruth of my friends, I would say.
Oh, I love
my
that.
dad. Yeah, it was fun. I didn't know that at that point. I didn't know who Dr. Ruth was. I just knew that I was the house that was scientific and medical because my dad was a medical doctor and had all the sex books. I have them behind me. Actually, my screen is a little, the blur background, but I've got, the Peter Mayle books and the, all the sex ed books that I had when I was a kid. And then I just found that people would come and ask questions, read books, and I'd have answers. And that kind of just evolved into its own thing. Fast forward to college. Are you familiar with the vagina monologues?
Yes.
Yes.
So when I was in college, this was 21 years ago when I was in the vagina monologues, and Eve Ensler allowed for original productions. You could have up to 3 original monologues in your college production. So I submitted mine, and it was all about female pleasure because when I read her manuscript, it was fabulous, but it was missing female pleasure. And so I wrote one on female pleasure and my toy collection and my self-pleasure practices, and just wanted to normalize that. Again, I had no intention of being a sex therapist. I just enjoyed this topic and thought it needed more airtime and felt very comfortable discussing it. And then my parents came to this event.
Oh my God. I could not.
I thought I would die too. They were not married at the time, so they came to different shows. I had a, matinee and then an evening show. And I had to get on stage, and I was like, you know what, if I can do this in front of them, I can do this in front of anyone.
Oh my God. I love that.
Wow.
So that was sort of the context that fueled my thinking post-college in terms of psychology and sexuality. And then I sort of brainstormed, how can I make this a career? I really want to do something with this.
Yeah.
And originally I wanted to work with only women, and really only women of sexual assault survival, and support them to reclaim their sexuality. And I realized from a mentor pretty early that if I leave men out of the picture, I'm leaving out a significant portion of the population that also needs education prophylactically to understand how to just be in relationship in the best way we can be in relationship, whatever that means to you. But, the safer, the happier, the safer, the happier the relationship, we can go in so many different directions. And I think that's a bigger thing on a bigger level, right? I think the world works on relationships, but I do it on a very small level with just couples and individuals.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's fascinating.
That's a great story.
It is a really good story.
It's an intuitive story. It's like it was her calling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I love that comment about, if I can do this in front of my parents, I can do this for anybody. And I think that is like, there's so much freedom in that, of like, this is my story. I shouldn't feel ashamed about it.
Yeah.
Like, this is who I am. And I think with sex specifically, there's so much stigma and so much embarrassment behind sex and sexuality, and the shame that comes with all of that, that is hard to navigate, especially, if you do come from a background of assault or trauma and things like that. So, wow, that's a really,
or if your family doesn't talk about it's an uncomfortable taboo subject. And so people aren't talking about it to their children, their teenagers, whatever the appropriate age is for you and your family. But, they're not talking about it either.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you work with individuals and couples, how do they go about learning that they need somebody who is in the sex therapy world?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I work with both individuals and couples, and I think they come to me for very different reasons.
Okay.
The individuals usually come to me because their sexual functioning isn't as functional as they want it to be. So for an example, men, their penis doesn't work, always brings them in the door.
Right.
You know, my erectile dysfunction, my premature ejaculation, my out of control behavior with porn or escorts, like whatever that is, it brings them in the door.
Right.
And I usually just send them right to Daniel because he does great work with them.
And you also have online courses for that stuff too. So even if,
and we do.
Yeah, which is super, I mean, I think that's all really fascinating. So sorry, go on. I just wanted to make sure
thanks
that people
for the
knew.
interruption. Yeah, I appreciate that. I sometimes forget about the online courses. I'm not good at marketing myself as well, but the online courses are great because, you know, if you're a little bit more private or resistant to doing therapy, and there's still a stigma around therapy, that was not well supported by the New York Times on Sunday either. I think therapy works.
Yes,
but
very much so.
Yeah, the online course is very helpful if you just want the privacy of your own home at your own pace when you feel ready. So that's true. So, and then individual women will come in usually when their orgasm is elusive, or I have primary anorgasmia. They've never had an orgasm with anyone. Secondary anorgasmia, they struggle to orgasm with a partner. A lot of women come in with low arousal or low desire struggles. That's nuanced because sometimes they're just fine and normal the way they are. They just, it's low in comparison to another person. And that's subjective. So we talk about that, which I know we'll talk about more in this episode. So women will come in the door with that. And then the other thing women will come in the door with couples sometimes is their painful intercourse issues. And that's more heterosexually typically, but the painful intercourse is sort of, call it like America's best kept secret, because there's so many women who have painful intercourse and painful penetration, and they just quietly suffer in silence. So I have a lot of women that come in with that. Usually their pelvic floor physical therapists send them to me,
Love that.
which is great. And if they don't have a pelvic floor physical therapist, the first thing I do in therapy is
send them to that. Yes. We love
Yes.
a good pelvic floor therapist. I talk about them all the time on this podcast because I think even as someone who doesn't have children, the act of going to a pelvic floor therapist really helps you kind of understand what's going on in your pelvic floor, and that nothing's wrong. Like you're not intuitively wrong. Things are just kind of out of whack, and that there are solutions. So cheers to you for having that like dynamic referral back and forth. I think that's super important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer of the psyche has to support the body, and the body, the psyche, and it's a feedback loop.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very much so. Well, cool. So it's just like a big referral network. It's not just like I woke up one day and was like, I need a sex therapist. It's like, I had these things going on and I don't really know where else to look. So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Some people, you know, I'll get people that have talked to their doctors or their gynecologists or their urologists. And I don't know how the doctors kind of suss out whether their relationship is sort of fragile, but they do. And then they'll send them to me as well. Wow. So even if they're just not happy in their relationship, they're not happy with their sexual relationship for some reason, there's a discrepancy in desire, there's a discrepancy in style or a vanilla kink, you know, conflict. Those kinds of things people will certainly come to navigate as well.
I love that.
Well, it's tough to have conversation around that. It's tough to even know how to talk about that, I would imagine, if you don't have the tools. You know, we were just talking about in a previous episode, having, you know, you can't have enough tools. And you know, the dialogue around that with your partner is extremely important because there's so many emotions associated with it, right? Being attractive, being wanted, feeling safe.
The communication piece, I think, is probably the biggest. And I think what we don't talk about as a society, especially growing up, is good sex happens when you feel safe.
Yes.
And when you feel safe, there's usually a shit ton of communication that happens prior to feeling safe. And so we assume that there's foreplay and then there's the act of sex. And in reality, women specifically, or people with the female anatomy, we initially engage from our brain. And if we don't feel safe and we don't feel engaged, it doesn't fucking matter what the reaction is downstairs, because it's never going to be, you're never going to orgasm. You're never going to get to that point where you're like, I feel fucking great. Let's go. Like it's, especially if you can't communicate with your partner. So I think that's a really big deal. I think that's a really big deal. Can you talk into that for us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting discrepancy, safety versus danger. And Esther Perel is brilliant, and I love, she sort of paraphrases from one of our fabulous sex therapists prior to her. His name is Jack Morin. He wrote The Erotic Mind, and he's no longer with us. But his equation was this: attraction plus obstacle equals erotic. So the obstacle is what makes it exciting, mysterious, dangerous. And that's what gets our endorphins going and our attraction in it. That's what makes sex exciting. But if the obstacle is too dangerous, then our anxiety overwhelms the obstacle and we don't feel safe. So I think both need to coexist. You're absolutely 100% right, Caitlin, around safety first, because we can't take risks. We can't, jump off the cliff with our bungee cord if we're, unless we feel safe that the bungee cord is really strong. And we've seen some other people jump off with the bungee cord and we're fine.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to feel a sense of safety to be able to feel some bandwidth to engage in adventure or obstacle or danger. Right. And some people don't even need that. But I do find that couples, I usually have a more adventurous person and a very more creature of comfort person. Right. And then we have to,
you got to navigate that. Yeah.
Always.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Obstacle piece. I've never even thought about that, but like that is very much
the
thing.
Chase.
Well, it's a chase, but it's also like why people want to fuck in the airplane bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everybody's obstacle is a little different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the chase, sometimes it is the airplane bathroom.
Dirty.
I like the chase too, not the airplane.
Yeah, that's gross.
Look, I can hardly fit in the airplane bathroom by myself and all the weird liquids. I'm like, oh, I could never. But I very much feel that. Like, I get that very much. That's funny.
So everybody knows Adam and Eve. Everybody knows the store. Tell me how you work with them. What does that look like?
It was very fun. I worked with them, I think, this is my 5-year anniversary, if I'm thinking about it correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in May. So I should say happy anniversary to them, at least for our relationship. I met the marketing director back in my early 20s or mid-20s at an ASECT meeting, which is the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. So if you are listening, by the way, and you want a sex therapist in your area, that is a great organization in terms of finding somebody certified. Anyway, he was lovely, but he already had an expert. Unfortunately, she passed away of breast cancer. It was really sad.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But she was so wonderful. And then so when he reached out to me, ironically, my mother had also just died. And so I was like, I can't do this relationship with you guys. This is too much death. And I just say that, I know that's a strange way to begin my journey with them, but it began from a place of growth and life, like from out of death comes life is my feeling. And I learned a ton about how to be on a screen and make small videos. They wanted me to make little short educational videos, and that is my primary role with them. Savvy Sex in 60 Seconds. And they're just like bite-sized clips of sex education. You name the topic, it's just a bite-sized clip. So I think it's really digestible for our instant gratification culture and our ADD culture, me included, where you just need something short and sweet.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of thing, yes, you understand?
I was going to say, that's how we found you. I'm obsessed with those. So I reached out to my contact at Adam and Eve. I'm like, I need an introduction because I'm obsessed with these little snippets of like, they're so palatable. Like you can just like, I don't know.
Where do they live?
They're so good. They're so good. So they're on their page and they always share them with the story. So like, I always make sure when I see a new story,
Adam and Eve.
I know you're usually in there somewhere, and then I go and find wherever the route is. So like I can see it, but they're my absolute favorite. So it's working because that's how we found you.
Oh, that's so fun. Oh, that's great. I think they're on TikTok and YouTube as well.
Okay.
I think you met Michael, and he's the social media guy. I'm sort of a social media dinosaur and don't care to actually change that. So I let him do all that.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm like, it's working. That's how we found you. So you started with their 60-second little bite-sized stuff for sure.
I love it. I love that you love it. I guess I'm curious to ask you, I know this is a little bit of a side, what you like about them. Is it just that it's palatable, or is there something else?
It's a taboo topic that people don't talk about. And you come at it with such like a blasé-faire, like relaxed, open, your face is like congenial, and you just have this air of like, without it feeling like I know and I'm being pious about it. I don't know. There's just no stigma. There's no, the shame is not there. And it's very hard to find people that talk about sex without the shame, especially in the South. And it's really refreshing. So I just really appreciate you.
Thank you. That's a great compliment. Made my day.
Oh,
Thanks.
good. Yeah. Very much so. I am sorry I interrupted your dialogue of how you work with them outside of that.
Okay. So the social media, little bite-sized things.
Yep.
And then I also do a lot of written media. So a lot of different media channels will ask for an expert advice or a full article. And so I do a lot of written pieces as well.
I love that.
And then they had me write an ebook at one point. A lot of it is just sexual health and education. That's my role. I don't have to sell anything. I'm not a salesperson. I end up probably selling things just because I do like some of their toys and advocate for them. But that's not my primary job. I'm not a salesperson. I'm health and education.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad that that there is a platform that people can actively pursue sex toys, but it's also an educational piece. It's not just like buy to buy. It's human pleasure is very normal. And to have the educational piece behind it, I also think is super important because it doesn't just feel like kind of a greasy salesman mentality. It's like, and that's, I think what I love about Michael is that he is local-ish. I've had dinner with him now and we talk back and forth about different marketing things. And I love the way they approach it because he wants it to be very inclusive and they post a ton of content a day. So it's just like, it's really cool that it's not just like pleasure is for the male gaze only. And you should buy it because it's going to be sexy for your partner. It's like, no, your intimacy and your pleasure is very important too. So I do very much appreciate that. Very much so.
Yeah. Their mission is to be pleasure positive.
Yes.
And when we were collaborating back in the initial days of signing a contract together, that was very important to me too, that they were pleasure positive. So I was like, all right, we can work together. This relationship will work.
Yeah. That's awesome. So when somebody comes to you, how do they decide who they see, you or your partner? I was going to ask, is that an internal thing? Okay.
Yes. I take every phone call. I don't have a secretary or an assistant. I take every phone call. That's very intentional because I think it's hard to make the phone call.
Yes.
And I call people back and I usually have a 15 to 25-minute chat with them about their struggle. Sometimes they're in a different state and I just hear about it and then I give them a referral for somewhere else.
Right.
Sometimes I hear about it and I'm like, all right, you need to definitely see my husband because that's his expertise. Sometimes I say, I think it'd be better with me. Sometimes I say, I think you'd be better off with a trauma specialist first and foremost, and then come back to us.
Wow.
So I'll be really honest with people around what I think the best direction is for them and why. And honestly, sometimes with just couples who have desire discrepancy, because both my husband and I do that with our couples, I get a feeling of personality. And some personalities go better with him and some go better with me.
Yeah.
So I just kind of feel that out, sort of my intuition on that one.
Yeah.
But it's usually right.
I love that.
So you're in person, you do in person. You would prefer that? Is that what I'm understanding?
Zoom, I think, right?
Both at this point, the first 10, 11 years of my career was in person. We were in Boulder, Colorado. And then COVID hit and everything went to telehealth. And I moved far from Boulder into the mountains and love living here. I'm a mountain girl. I'm from Miami, but I'm a mountain girl. And
that's awesome.
Fair. Totally fair.
And so it's mostly telehealth, but I'll say that where we live is like this little beautiful nugget of nature. And so we do weekend intensives for those. And those are great because I love face-to-face and I love that weekend format because you get a lot in an intense way. It's like this big, juicy journey. And then you can like go off and marinate and then touch in every once in a while on Zoom.
Oh, I love that. Ooh, that feels really good.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you mentioned something about pleasure discrepancy, and I think sometimes people don't know what to ask. I understand what that is, but can you maybe explain it for people who don't maybe know what that is, that it might be happening in their relationship and they don't even know? Could you delve into that for us?
For sure. So That's a great, you actually edited that to pleasure discrepancy, which is so interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I usually, no, it's great because it's like my mind is going in multiple directions of reframing that. Clinically, we call it desire discrepancy.
Okay.
But it's an interesting question between desire and arousal and the sort of role of pleasure. So desire is what turns on the mind, right? I want to want. Some people don't want to want, right? If you're on the asexual spectrum, you don't want to want, just not there. But people who want to want, that's their desire, right? Arousal is what turned on the body, right? If you got in the bathtub and started touching yourself and used a great toy, your body might turn on and probably would turn on and your arousal would kick in and you'd feel arousal in your body.
Right.
So I say that differently because some people, their brain goes on first and then their body comes online. Some people, the body needs to get warmed up and then the brain boots up and goes, oh, I'm so glad I'm here. That's me. It's like 20 minutes in to foreplay. I'm like, I look at my husband, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm here.
Yeah.
We have this like funny joke, like my brain finally came online.
Look at her. She's finally here. Yeah. Love that.
I say that with lots of permission for people who also feel the same way of they might not feel like, oh, I'm cheerleading and so excited and jumping up and down to like go have sex. Again, if the obstacle is low, there's a lot of safety and it may be kind of monotonous, right? And so it's a different gateway into sex when there is a lot of safety and the obstacle is low. Now I'm kind of getting into the clinical weeds, but the discrepancy is when you have two people or more. I know I was listening to your podcast with, you have multiple partners, Caitlin, right?
Yes, I have. And we have had other people on this platform that have been in polyamorous relationships and all sorts of things like that. So yes, absolutely.
So you're just basically, you have an individual and they're bookmarking their sense of desire or arousal in comparison to another or more others, right? So the discrepancy is we have a gap in desire that is actually becoming a conflict in how we navigate a sex life. If it's a small gap and people can navigate it, then they don't come to me.
Right.
They come to me when the gap is significant enough that they can't actually communicate their way through it and find a way forward. And usually it's more than sex at that point. That's the tip of the iceberg. It's the stuff underneath as well. Sex is usually the symptom, but it doesn't mean we don't fix the symptom. I always fix the symptom if I can with people, or I try to. I'm not a magic worker, but I try to support fixing the symptom.
Yeah.
And then I try to invite looking at the iceberg underneath. Some people want to look, some people don't want to look.
That's fair. That's fair. Right on. Okay. So it's a discrepancy from one person to another. And that I feel like
desire. Yeah.
I feel like that happens with a lot of couples. I know it's hard to navigate that because sometimes when you get into a situation, you're like, I have this kink and I'm a little embarrassed by it, but I really enjoy it. And I don't know how to talk to my partner about it in a safe way that doesn't make them run away.
Yeah.
And do you have any, this might be too deep, but do you have any tips for people that are navigating those waters of, I have this very specific kink. I really like this person. I really trust them. I want to pursue this with them, but I don't know how to talk to them about it. Could you give some like little touch points on that for how they could maybe start that conversation?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't actually matter what the topic is. Starting the conversation in my mind is all the same, which is inviting a conversation. Right? Can I invite you to sit down or go for a walk with me to chat about something I've really been kicking around or a fantasy or a desire?
Yeah. I like that.
And then, in that safe space, the other person gets to go, okay, let's do it on a walk. Bilateral processing out in the world, in the nature is a great place to have conversation.
That's fair. That's
or
awesome.
wherever is a useful place to have conversation. So I think it starts there with, let me invite you to a conversation.
Yeah.
So you know what's kind of kicking up.
Yeah.
And then I say, just own, usually you'll feel anxious about this, right? So it's like, okay, I'm feeling anxious, just going to name that because that dilutes some of the anxiety.
Yeah.
And then it's just that authentic sharing. And hopefully the relationship feels safe enough to say things like, I'd really love to explore, bondage, or I'd really love to explore a power dynamic or role play, whatever, it is. And then sometimes it might be more conversation, depending how it lands for the other person.
Yeah.
And sometimes, usually it's not a flat out like, no, get out of here. I've never really seen that. I would say the most dramatic example I've ever seen, and they worked it out so beautifully, was this couple who one person was super, super vanilla. The other person was super, super kinky. And they just looked at their calendar and chose nights of the month that were going to be their pleasure nights. And they never really shared an orgasm on the same night, if you will.
Right.
But it was one night was a gift, the gift of arousal and pleasure for one person.
Oh.
So like the kinky person would offer vanilla activities and pleasure to their partner, and they had a great time, and it was just a gift, which is totally fine. We don't have to have pleasure at the same exact time.
Interesting.
And then the other nights of the week,
moment,
or other nights of the month, that person would offer a kinky experience for her, and that's how they navigate it, and it's great.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Oh, there's a lot of like freedom in that.
There is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Really?
I imagine you get calls where people will say, you know, I really want to come and see you. I'm having trouble talking to my partner about that. Right. And that's, what advice do you give to someone who would love to see a sex therapist, but wants to introduce it to their partner and it wants to be really careful?
I get this a lot, actually. I usually talk through their struggle on the phone. And if their partner is, it's stages of motivation, right? If they're not even contemplating the idea of a relationship change, I invite the other person to just start therapy individually. Because what that does for the partner is it creates some sense of sometimes they'll join the process a little bit later.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say, look, we've had a great conversation here on the phone. Go check out my website. I find that my website's really safe for people. It's very professional.
Yes.
It's not overly clinical, but it explains everything, I think, in a very like simple but professional way.
It does.
People have a little bit of resistance around like, what am I getting into?
Yeah.
I say, look, let them surf the website. If it feels like the right fit for them, great. And if it doesn't, and I'm not the right fit, I'll give you a list of people that might be, and that's totally fine too. I always want people to get the help they need.
Right.
And oftentimes they'll look at the website and go, okay, you're not the scariest person on this planet. It looks like you won't bite. I usually say I won't bite, and they're like, okay, this is going to be okay.
This is what I do for a living. You're not going to say something I haven't heard before.
Yep.
Right.
I say all that.
Your website very much does that though. There's a beautiful about page. There's photos of you both. Like it's very inviting. And it's like, if you don't want to do it in person, here are our online guides that you can do. You can do it without us. Like it's very much like, these are the other platforms that we provide for you. It very much does that. So I think that's just kind of calming in and of itself. It's very much appreciated.
Could you tell us the story of how you and your husband ended up working together and having this agency? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, Institute. But I like agencies too.
God damn it. I'm so sorry. We spent how much time on the damn website?
It's all right.
Institute. We appreciate you.
Fine.
No, totally I feel bad, but yes, Institute.
Intimacy Institute. I like alliteration. That's why I named it with the two eyes, and then the little symbol is two eyes kind of dancing intimately. So anyway,
fancy.
Love that.
I actually opened my business before I met him. And when I met him, I'm older than him, and I met him, he had finished a graduate degree, not in therapy, by the way, but in environmental studies, or no, wait, wasn't that he was working in an environmental firm, but he studied Latin American something or other. I don't even know what he studied. I know what he studied next.
Something important. We know what he studied next. Yes.
And so I met him, and he was kicking around the idea of maybe going back to school to do a degree that he could put a career together with. And his degree was interesting, but he wasn't planning to be a professor, and that was really the only thing he could do with it.
Oh, fair.
So he was kicking around that idea. I was actually on a dating sabbatical. So when I met him, I'm like, nice to meet you. You're very cute. By the way, I'm on a sabbatical, so don't even ask me out. But my sabbatical ends September 15th, so maybe think about it then.
I love that.
That's what I'm calling mine, a sabbatical.
Okay.
That's what I'm on right now.
I love that.
Oh, that's good. Sabbaticals work. You date yourself.
Yes,
which I think is so important.
So important.
Sorry, go on.
Important. So I'm on my sabbatical. I meet him. We are friends for a while, and then we end up dating. But during the end of my friendship's transition to dating phase, he decides he's going to go back and do a degree in marriage and family therapy. And at this point, he really wanted to specialize in grief and masculinity, not necessarily together, but these two topics he really liked.
Yeah.
And when he finished his degree, I mean, at this point, I'm deep into many years of the business. I'm starting to get a longer wait list. I'm like, can you study sex therapy? Because I need you to take some of these people. But I can't, it'd be really helpful. And he's like, I'm not really into sex therapy, but I'll study up and I'll take a few of them to, take off, take off, take it off your case. And he fell in love with it. Then he developed his own protocol that's brilliant. And he, now we're here doing this.
Wow.
On a wait list until fall. Right. Don't even call them. They're not taking clients. Just kidding. Call them and talk to them, but get on the wait list.
That is amazing. That's amazing.
That's amazing though. And it's amazing that you've created this entire space that
you
share with him.
Yeah.
That's intimate as well. Yeah.
It's super fun because we geek. I mean, one of the things that we really geek out on is sort of that psychological intimacy. And we love to just talk. Sometimes we talk cases, but sometimes we really just talk about like the theory, like if there's a certain case and like, what is the theory or the tool that we're extracting and developing out of it? So like one of our online courses for couples is Roadmap to Intimacy. And a lot of the tools in that we developed together based on the couples we saw and also based on our marriage. And where we just like fell on our face and made mistakes and had to figure it out from the ground up.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's fun being married to somebody in the same field.
Yeah. I mean,
that's very cool.
I wouldn't know. I'm swinging and missing out here.
Well,
it's okay. Look,
we're exactly where we need to be.
We are. Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly where we need to be.
Yeah.
Yes. Right here, right now.
Right here, right now, which is, I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. And this is what's been bringing me a lot of joy recently. So, so let's talk about briefly women who are maybe perimenopausal, menopausal, who are struggling with orgasm and intimacy just in general. And I feel like this topic specifically isn't talked about nearly as much because our bodies go through a hormone change that affects both the dryness in the vagina all the way up to like the mental state of how you feel about sex and intimacy. Can you talk a little bit about just that transition from going along in your day-to-day life to all of a sudden you've met this change and you're starting to see your body change and things are happening and intimacy starts to feel a little bit different? Could you talk briefly about that? That was a very general question, but
and briefly it'll be a little harder, but I'll do the best I can. It's a really popular subject right now, and it's great that hormone replacement therapy is being debunked. And what I mean by that is that the Women's Health Initiative that did the original study many, many years ago that said hormones are dangerous are being debunked because hormones are not dangerous. Wow. And I would say most women need to be on them in menopause if they can. And there are a lot of great gynecological menopause experts out there. There's not a ton of them, but find one, and not any gynecologist, but the ones that are gynecological menopause experts, because what they do is they take in the endocrinology and the hormone profile and also the cancer risk, which that's where all the data is being debunked.
Yes.
And saying that it is very prophylactically or preventively important to be on hormones for us as women. I'm saying us because there's the three of us here, for women, or for, people who have this menopause change, however you identify. And, that's interesting because if you're changing your hormones, that's a whole different thing. But so talking about if you haven't changed your hormones.
Yes.
What happens in menopause is you fall off the cliff of hormones and all your progesterone and estrogen and testosterone just like drop into an abyss. And it makes huge changes in somatic symptoms, which is why we have hot flashes and sleep issues, huge issues around the vagina, and that, the tissues being fragile and thin and, can tear. making, if you like penetration, makes it very difficult for a lot of people, can feel like sandpaper. Sometimes the orgasm does become more elusive.
Right.
And on a health level, there's cardiovascular and osteoporosis risks for not having hormones. Hormones are really great for our arteries, right? Estrogen is needed for the viscosity and the just for the for our arteries to function as well as they can, right?
Yeah.
They can. So there's a lot of utility to being on hormones, is my first and foremost like invitation. Now, if a woman cannot be on them for whatever reason, or has chosen not to be on them for whatever reason, totally a fine choice, right? Your body, your choice.
Absolutely.
Big believer of that. And, if that's your choice, we do some workarounds, right? There's other meds out there to navigate some of these symptoms for sure. I just had a wonderful conversation with a colleague of mine. Her name is Batsheva, and she used to work in a clinic, and she's like, every single hormone struggle has a solution. So even if it's, I should say, every menopause issue has a solution.
Yeah.
And she's not incorrect in that. It's just one size may not fit all. And so how do you then find your unique profile? What actually is happening?
Right.
Do we need to find different ways in for arousal?
Yeah.
Do we need to get a stronger toy? Definitely had women have to upgrade their toy to like a powerful Hitachi wand to get that orgasm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do what you need to do.
If it's safe enough, a little bit of testosterone in that hormone profile can go a long way in terms of arousal and orgasm for sure.
Wow.
Using it, not losing it. It's cliche, but it's helpful, right? So even if you're not having as much partner contact, make sure you're doing a good practice of self-pleasure so that things keep working and moving and your body remembers, right? Our body is brilliant and it has its own agenda sometimes. And it remembers pleasure if we allow it to remember pleasure.
I love that.
So
Yeah.
so that's important too.
Wow. I love all of that.
That's good.
That is so good. And I don't think
It's
about
a lot
that.
of really good info.
I don't really think about that though. I mean, I haven't had a thyroid since I was 15 and I'm also 34. So like
I was gonna say, you look young.
My hormones they've been erect since I was 15. So like I've never really been regulated. So like I have symptoms of like menopausal with the hot flashes and the sweating and whatever, because I'm on a synthetic hormone for my thyroid, and the thyroid kind of runs the whole body. Like it's your thermostat and it's kind of the driver for all the things. So I've had to kind of navigate those waters in and of myself and not being in menopause or perimenopause. And so it can be really confusing and really alarming when a doctor looks at you and they're like, these things are going to change. And you're like, the fuck? I didn't ask for them to change.
Yeah.
What do I do now? And so it was just kind of navigating those waters. So I think for a lot of people, again, it's just not really knowing what to ask. Like we live in a society where most of the doctors we see are male, and you're like, you don't fucking understand what I'm talking about anyways. Like, why should I trust you? I don't know. So it's just nice to hear it from an outside perspective like this of like, we're not all crazy. This is really very normal.
And not all experts are created equal or are experts, right? And genitals and gender aside, sometimes you might find a male gyno that's great. But my invitation is find the gynecological person who specializes in menopause because they exist and they will know this intersection well.
Yes.
Okay. And that's I think an important piece if you're a menopause listener.
Yeah.
For sure. But the other piece is the power of the mind. I mean,
yes.
Right? The power of the mind is huge.
Yeah. Do you have any special lubricants that you recommend to people who are going through menopause?
That's a great question.
It's very specific, I know, but
there is a menopause expert I listen to. I listen to her podcast. Dr. Lauren Stryker is a menopause gynecological expert. It's Streicher. She has books and information on her podcast around lube. Not all lubes are created equal either.
Yeah. Correct.
And there's like different, none of them are passed by the FDA. So let's just start there.
Fair.
And all of them, even though the ones that say they're the most, luscious and viscous and do the most lubricating, they might actually end up in the long run drying you out. And so she has a whole sheet on this. So I learned a lot about lubes. I'll say that I'm a little biased, but I like coconut oil.
Yeah. Safe.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
A lot of people
You
do.
don't need those chemicals.
Easy.
Yeah. Easy. Easy
If you're
peasy.
putting chemicals in your body versus putting coconut oil, it's like, I don't know really what I'm putting in my body with a lube. And I kind of know what I'm putting in my body with the coconut oil, but again, one size doesn't fit all. Some people don't slough it out of their vagina very well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Most people are like, oh my gosh, you just paid for all your sessions with that suggestion.
Also fair. Also fair.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, no, I think it's important to know what you like and what you don't. Some people's vaginas are super fussy. I know mine is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there are a lot of lubes I can't use. Don't come at me with that bullshit. It's not going in me. Like I'm
Let me get
super
the
picky.
coconut oil,
Love
honey.
to get the shit that I know works.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like a lot of tests. I honestly don't know the name of it. It's in my Amazon recently bought always. It's got this blue logo, and actually Adam and Eve was the only place I used to be able to buy it, and they don't sell it anymore. It's like a dark black bottle with a blue label. And I love this stuff. It is the best. And it works with all my toys too. So it's important.
You should tell them or let me know that name of that eventually. And we'll tell them because they should sell it again if it's so popular.
Oh,
at least useful.
Look, we got ins now. We got ins.
Back in stock.
Get that shit going. I love that.
Why not? Unless there's a reason they don't. I mean,
I was going to say there's probably a reason they don't, but it's worth a shot because the last 2 times I've been, there's one right down the street from my house. Last 2 times I've been, they've not had it. So I've had to order it.
Oh, interesting. So you shop in a physical store because you're in North Carolina.
I do. We have a huge Adam and Eve down the street from my house. And that was always kind of a mom, close your ears, but this was always kind of a fun date night thing with my ex. He was a piece of shit. Shout out to that. But we had really fucking good sex. And so sometimes date nights would be like dinner and going to Adam and Eve to find a new toy. And like,
that's great.
It was like our favorite thing to do.
Cute.
And I mean, my sex toy drawer it's so big, it has its own spot in the closet. Like it's big. But it was always so fun because it was like, we were finding out what each other's pleasures were.
Yeah.
What's
your intimate? Yeah.
Like we can do it. And like, we would always we would stop at the ABC store and we would get a couple of little nips and we'd like make a little mixed drink before we walked up. And like, it was just like such a fun date night. And, that's about the only thing I miss about that entire situation.
That's a very cute idea for a date night.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's so fun. And it doesn't have to be Adam and Eve. That's just the store that we liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what was accessible to you.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much joy in other people's pleasure for me. Like this is probably TMI, but I very much enjoy watching other people's pleasure rather than like, I don't know. There's just something so fun for me about learning what somebody likes and then being able to execute it. Cause I feel like I need the atta girl, like you did so good. Like I need the reassurance that I'm doing the right thing. And that was the easiest way to do that. Cause it was like, I could hear about it and then we could just play and get it right. And I think that was always so fun for me. And I think that's the thing I miss the most about a continuous partner is that.
But wanting to please your partner is part of how you love them.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
It's very much a love language. I don't know what love language that fits into, but acts of service, maybe. But it's definitely
more than a love language though, Caitlin, is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's an erotic turn on. And I share that one with you actually, that sort of voyeuristic watching of other people's pleasure. It's fun.
It is.
Some people are more exhibitionistic. Some people are, want to just be in the experience versus watching the experience.
Right.
But it's it's your erotic turn on.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Great.
No shame in that game.
No.
And I think a lot of that, obviously I'm a boudoir photographer and I shoot kink and erotica. I have about a handful of them a year that come in. I shoot them continuously. Like I have one couple, I'm shooting their maternity shoot in a week, 2 weeks. Because we did this like crazy voyeuristic out in the middle of the ocean, super fun shoot. And he texted me and was like, surprise, we're actually pregnant again. And I'm like, bet. So they're super kinky and they're so much fun to shoot. Right. But I really enjoy the way people fit together. I think it's very artsy. Like I call it kind of artsy fartsy. But I think when you find a human who speaks the same language as you and your kink or whatever that looks like fit together, it's so beautiful. And it's like, who doesn't want their own version of their fantasy captured, their love captured like that? I think it's so sexy. And I didn't realize that other people didn't think that way. Like it was very foreign to me to hear other photographers be like, ooh, I would never. I'm like, wait, why? I didn't understand it for a minute. And then I went, oh, because that's not your shit. That's not your jam.
Yeah.
But I think it's so fun and like so sexy to have those photos of like you intimately with your partner.
Well, you have to understand, people have to unlearn some of the stuff they've been taught. I mean, I've had friends who they were taught sex was dirty.
Yes.
Right. Or they had trauma. And so watching that is triggering or whatever it is, it's always something.
Yeah. Yep. Very much that.
Caitlin, hearing you speak, I bet that's what differentiates you. I mean, that's what differentiates you from other photographers, but that's probably what makes you so good, I imagine. I actually haven't seen your photographs, but I'd love to. Around if you have that like inclination to be a voyeur anyway into other people's pleasure, then people feel safe to engage in their pleasure while also being on screen or
on screen,
with a camera, which is great.
That's interesting. That's a great point.
I never even thought of it like that, but because it's very clinical for me. People are always like, isn't that weird? I'm like, no, because as an artist, you're looking for the art, right? You're looking for those little moments of like the nuances and the breath and the moment right before, or like you're looking for those things. So it's not really like, what's the right word? Like sometimes boudoir photographers do this the wrong way and they use it like as a icky, they're doing it for their own weirdness, like their own
voyeurism.
Voyeurism. For me, it's like, I know I like seeing that. And so if you've come to me, you probably do too. And there's so much freedom in that, allowing somebody to just show you the way that you look together.
Well, I think what you're trying to say is that it brings you joy to see people pleased,
happy,
enjoying themselves, right? And yes, in your intimate relationships, it becomes an intimate thing for you.
Yes.
But in your business, it's very clinical. It's a professional thing that you're doing, but it still brings you joy to see people having pleasure and, feeling safe around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the best way to put it. I don't want to sound like a total perv, but
No, you're not a total perv.
That's the
here's
opposite.
what strikes me. You give people permission to be authentically erotic.
Yes. That. Absolutely that.
Steal that. You can have that.
Yeah, you need to steal that.
I do actually really like that. I give people permission to be genuinely,
authentically erotic.
Authentically erotic.
We're making shirts. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, this is so good. This is so good.
So what about what are you excited about in the next year?
Yeah.
Oh my. I'm excited about a lot of things. I have a podcast going with a woman named Kim Kaplan. It's called Modern Pleasure. It's fun. And I actually am excited about the possibility of doing more projects in that space, or maybe even on TV. I'm picking around some of those ideas.
I love that.
We love that.
Getting the message out to a bigger audience.
Absolutely.
Right?
That.
Netflix.
She's coming.
Look at
I
her.
don't know.
Yeah, we're doing that.
Oh, I love that.
It'd be fun.
Look. You mentioned her earlier. Who is the lady that used to be on late night TV? That
Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth.
You should be Dr. Ruth. Oh my God. I used to
the
love
new
watching
modern
her.
Dr. Ruth, or the lady that does the sex rooms on Netflix.
Look, there's a huge platform for this.
But you're younger and
know what you're doing.
Well, everybody has their different gig. What's cool about Dr. Ruth is she was older and she brought sex to the radio.
Yeah.
In a time when it was really taboo.
Super taboo.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there, a lot of sexuality personalities out there. What makes my husband and I unique is, again, our marriage.
Yeah.
And that we do this. So we, that intersection of like, we're a married couple doing this as well, kind of has this like unique flow to it.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I asked I was like, tell me more about this dynamic. How is it?
Yeah.
I
love that.
It's like this very sort of picture perfect couple who give advice to other couples, but like, you're like, but I want to see in, but what happens? It's interesting, Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
We struggle though. We're human.
Sure. Yeah, you're human. Exactly.
So that's fun. And then, I got trained with MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, or MDMA assisted therapy, really with regards to trauma, but eventually, hopefully, for couples too.
Yeah.
It's still not yet quite legal with the FDA, but it's coming down the pipeline probably in the next 18 months. So I'm really excited about that intersection of psychedelics and sexuality, the intersection of psychedelics and couples therapy. Whether, I live in Colorado where psilocybin was just decriminalized, and that's coming down the pipeline to have more access, and hopefully access for individuals and or groups. So I'm excited about this new frontier, and I hope it's done well.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of healing and growth that can happen from different kinds of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, I'm excited about those possibilities as well.
I'm excited about that for you.
Yeah.
That's going to be
big
sick.
stuff. Yeah.
That's going to be so good. Oh, that's so fun. Good. Good.
So how can people find you?
My website's probably the easiest one.
Okay.
I do have an Instagram handle, Dr. Jenni Schuyler, JenniSkyler, but I probably only check Instagram once a week. When Michael wants me to repost a video.
Yeah.
I have a love-loathing relationship with social media. So
yeah, we all do. I feel like
it's just like there's a lot of utility to it.
Yeah.
I also find it to be the possible demise of our society.
Yeah.
I'm a face-to-face person. Whether you do it on a screen or you do it actually face-to-face, I think that's so important for relationships, any kind of relationship.
Absolutely.
So that's my little social media plug, or unplug, I should say. But I think the website's the easiest.
Yeah.
And, I like to get on the physical phone and call people back and try to help you.
Yeah. And you are on a wait list currently for new patients, correct?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have a wait list going, or is it just kind of like keep trying kind of thing?
Well, what I do, I have a sort of unique way of doing my wait list. I will put people on the calendar so wait list means I can get you on, let's say you wanted to be a client. I know in the fall, I can get you on my calendar consistently and see you, every week or every other week. So I put you on at that point, and then the wait list means if something opens up before that appointment, I'll reach out to you.
Beautiful.
Good.
Beautiful.
So you schedule them.
Yeah.
Because it's not just one visit. Yeah.
So they know when they're going to get in, and they know when they can get consistent care. What I don't like to do is pop you into an opening and then I can't give you consistent care, because my next opening is who knows when.
It's not just a one shot situation.
Right.
I appreciate that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool. And we'll tag all that stuff in our show notes per usual. But yes, we are so excited. Thank you so much for coming today. You are an incredible wealth of knowledge. You can also see her. She is not on her own social media much, but on the Adam and Eve social media, you can see her stuff. And I think it's fascinating, and you should definitely do that, because I don't know, you just resonate really well with me, and that's how I found you. So I think that's important to know for sure.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for listening to What the Body. If you like our content, make sure to like and subscribe. You can also find us on YouTube at What the Body, and then we are on IG at What the Body Pod. And you can always email us at hello@whatthebody.com.
Yes, we love emails.
We love emails. Thank you, Dr. Jenni, for being on with us today.
Thank you so much.
And we just adore you.
Oh, thank you. It was such a pleasure. Such a
All
pleasure.
right, we'll see you
Great
soon.
conversation.